Okay, you can begin.
Good night, everyone. So tonight we'll be discussing the topic of understanding others, which will be presented by myself, Jenny Williams, Selena Snacks, and Clarissa Choicing. So as we get into the presentation, we'll first be playing a video, and we need you guys to pay attention to the video and then give us feedback as you see fit based on what you understand took place in the video. As well as a small disclaimer as we go along with the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to jump in and ask them as we go along.
Yes.
Right, you could play the video now.
1 second, having technical difficulties. Brother.
Okay, we're not hearing the audio because when you went out and came back in, the toggle switch went off. So you have to stop sharing, go back to the toggle switch, turn it back on. You understand? Every time you're coming in and out.
Don't forget 109.
One more time.
I think.
Hey, hey, sweetie.
Hey, Cupcake.
Hey, Cupcake. Hey, kid.
Hey,
What?
your head is massive. Good job, guys.
It's pretty good.
Hey, you know what? No, I'm in a serious hurry, but someone needs to take a stand here. So in the name of all your victims...
I have no idea what that means, but it looks extremely insulting.
Is it the Vulcan gang sign?
I don't know what it means either, but that'll teach you for making fun of my head.
What? But we meant it as a compliment.
A big head means a big brain. You must be very intelligent.
Well, when you shout weird stuff from a tiny head,
Between huge arms.
it scares people.
So what should we do to make people feel good?
Try a softer approach. And keep your compliments simple. You're not doing too well with specifics.
Okay. How about... Nice.
That just went from uncomfortable to unacceptable. Maybe just stick to a friendly gesture.
Oh, I got it. Hey.
Stop. Maybe just a simple smile. You guys really need to get out more.
You're right. We need to hang out with some other people, but where?
The mall?
Ah,
Yeah.
Good idea.
Definitely not the mall. That's where I'm going.
Okay, good. So that was a short scene from The Amazing World of Gumball. I'm not too sure if most persons are familiar with it, but what are the key takeaways from the video in terms of what you guys think of understanding others means? Any feedback on the video?
Like with a person, we're not gonna understand what they truly mean unless we ask or we inquire further.
That's a good answer. Anyone else?
That your perspective on something and how you see it would very different from an opposite perspective.
Good. Anyone else? Okay. So based on that short video, we had different parts of the topics that we would be covering today. So as the slide goes along, keep that video in mind. We would play it at the end just to show you where in even a small clip through a cartoon, you could see different concepts of understanding others from a leadership role, which Gumball took on and carried in either different parts of life, whether it be work or any overall public environment or even at home. So coming down to the concept of understanding others, the concept of relational leadership involves recognizing the importance of effective communication and understanding in the leadership role. Leaders who can build trust, foster empathy, and facilitate open communication create environments where everyone can thrive. This process requires understanding not only in terms of their verbal communication, but also their nonverbal cues, cultural backgrounds, and unique perspectives. Next slide. Okay. So some of the topics we'll be covering today would be understanding others, speech communities, nonverbal communication, conflict resolution, decision making, the benefit of understanding others, leadership and communication, assertive communication, relational empathy, the role of gender in communication, cultural and gender lenses on communication, and building a food culture. So, as we delve a bit more into these topics, like I said before, feel free to ask any questions along the way, but take a couple of seconds to look at the different topics that we would be discussing. So, as we move on, I will be passing you on to my team member, Clarissa, which she'll be starting the other topics.
Thank you, Miss Williams. So, for the upcoming topic, I will be defining understanding and empathy. So, as you know, understanding and empathy are two very, very, very important concepts that put a significant role in effective communication and interpersonal relationships. Why I stress on the very important, like, why I think it's very important is because we deal with this on a day-to-day basis, whether it's through relationships or simple as communicating with your family or anybody. It comes at an everyday task. So the first thing I want to ask is, what exactly is understanding? Understanding refers to the ability to grasp the thoughts, feelings, and perspective of others. It is not just about hearing what someone has to say. And a good example would be when a person is talking and it just goes through one ear and out the next. I'm sure many of us guilty. We have gone through that where somebody would be talking to us and we wouldn't really be paying attention to it. And when the person asks us, we would just be lost or start to panic, like, oh my gosh, what did the person just say? So that is an example there. So that is not understanding. Understanding involves comprehending, breaking down, and processing their experiences and recognizing the context behind their words. So, for example, it comes like, let's say you're taking an English exam. You know, it's one thing to read a passage in the exam, but it's another thing to understand it and really properly process, okay, like what is going on in the story or what is the question really asking. That's where the breaking down and comprehending, that's where that part comes in. So when we take the time to understand someone, we acknowledge their individuality and their unique situations that they face. So I hope with this definition, everybody has like a more in-depth um, knowledge on understanding. Moving on, we'll be going up against empathy. So empathy, on the other hand, just goes a step further. It is the capacity to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and feel what they are feeling. So empathy is an emotional connection which allows us to respond to others in a more compassionate manner. And as you know, there are two main types of empathy, which is cognitive empathy, which is understanding another person's perspective intellectually. And then there's also emotional empathy, which involves sharing the feelings of another person. And both forms of empathy are crucial for building trust and rapport in relationships, whether personal or professional. And I think this empathy goes a long way when it comes to like relationships and all of that, especially like in families. You know, somebody might be going through a very tough time, you know, and just to have somebody could actually feel and relate, it means a lot when it comes to the other person. Moving on to the next slide. Right. So this is a quote from Kathy Reagan. Right. She was a former student government president at Rohan University. And Kathy states that she believes that every individual can provide a new perspective on a situation. No matter what your experiences are, they are different from mine, and therefore we see things differently. Using this perspective in addition to one's ideas allows for better communication, better solutions, and better leadership. which is the keys to life. So, next slide. Right. So now we'll be moving on to the barriers to understanding others. And as you can see, we have 4 topics to cover here. So the first one would be gender diversity. The second will be cultural diversity. The third one will be international diversity. And the fourth and last one will be cultural heritage. So let's dive into discussing gender diversity. So gender diversity refers to the differences in experiences and perspectives that people of different genders bring to interactions. For example, societal norms often shape how men and women communicate. Men might be encouraged to be more assertive and direct, while women might be socialized to be more empathic and nurturing. I am sure all of us can relate to this. I know for myself, I am one. I think as a female, when situations arise, we tend to focus more on how we feel. So we might be a little bit more emotional while the situation occurs. And men, on the other hand, would be a bit more opposite. You know, they might think based off of feelings. They might just be straight up and direct. And some of us women like to get pissed off and upset because of that. So, but that's one example. Another example, for instance, if a woman expresses concern about a problem, a man might perceive it as unnecessary emotionality rather than a valid point of view. Recognizing these differences in expression and communication styles is crucial for better understanding and collaboration. So a good example would be, I think a lot of these happens in relationships. You know, both partners would not see eye to eye on a lot of things, and eventually that runs into problems. You know, this one don't want to talk to that one. Both of them vex at each other, angry, and you know, it's a lot of these things is what ruins the relationship at the end of the day, right? They don't want to resolve the problem. And in order to resolve the problem, both partners need to have communication. They need to open up to one another. They need to explain what is bothering that person. A guy needs to understand, okay, a female, this is how she's feeling. She's looking at the problem on an emotional aspect. And a female needs to consider the fact that, okay, a guy is trying to be more assertive and direct. So it all boils down to communication and expressing to the person in front of you who you're having an issue with or the problem, right, to resolve it. And again, that is crucial for better understanding and collaboration. So moving on to the next slide. Right. So understanding cultural diversity. Cultural diversity encompasses the variations in beliefs, practices, and values among different cultures. Each culture has its own way of interpreting social cues and behaviors. For example, in some cultures, maintaining eye contact is seen as a sign of confidence and honesty, while in others, it might be considered as disrespectful. Additionally, language plays a significant role. Phrases that hold deep meaning in one culture might confuse someone from another background. And by learning about and respecting these cultural differences, individuals can foster a more inclusive environment that promotes understanding. I'm not sure if some of you maybe have friends that are from away, you know, the language barriers and all of that can be a bit confusing to how we would speak down here and all of that. Our background and how we grew up in a certain, like let's say in the Caribbean, it would be different in another country from away. So that is what is meant by like cultural diversity. And it can be a bit challenging. Next slide. Right, so understanding international diversity. International diversity refers to the differences that arise when people from various countries interact. Language barriers are a common challenge. Like I said, not everyone speaks the same language fluently, which can lead to miscommunication. Even if two people speak the same language, idioms or slang can vary greatly from one country to another. I can't tell you how much times I've related to this, even though I am from the Caribbean. Sometimes I run across or meet people from here, and the way that they talk and carry on a conversation. Yes, I know I speak English. Yes, I know I am from Trinidad. I live in the Caribbean, but sometimes I catch myself to try and grasp what this person is saying, especially when it's over text and they speak just as how they talk. I lose it sometimes. So that is a miscommunication. That is an example right there. Another example, a phrase that is common in American English might be unfamiliar or misinterpreted by someone from the UK or Australia. Furthermore, differing educational systems and ways of viewing global issues can create gaps in understanding. And being aware of these international nuances can help bridge communication gaps and promote clear understanding. And the last one, which I believe is cultural heritage. Right. So your cultural heritage. Cultural heritage includes the traditions, values, and histories that individuals inherit from their families and communities. This heritage shapes people's identities and worldviews. For example, someone from a culture that emphasizes collectivism may prioritize group harmony over individual opinions, which can lead to misunderstandings with someone from an individualistic culture who values personal expression. So, additionally, cultural heritage can influence how people view authority, relationships, and conflict. Acknowledging and valuing each other's backgrounds can lead to more respectful and open interactions. By understanding these barriers, gender diversity, cultural diversity, international diversity, and lastly, cultural heritage, we can become more empathic and effective communicators. This awareness allows us to approach conversations with curiosity and respect, ultimately fostering deeper connections with those around us. So, with that, does anybody have any questions with these last few slides that we just went through? Or is the silence gonna be like, okay, I understand everything and we can move on? Okay, so I think a few thumbs up or maybe one. So I would take that as everybody got a clear understanding of what we went through the first couple of slides. So I will now pass you on to my colleague, Selena, and she will guide you on to the next few slides.
Okay, yes. Hi, good day. I'm Selena, and firstly, I would be presenting on building a multicultural appreciation. Being an effective leader or participant in a diverse organization requires an openness to and appreciation of different cultures. Paul Pedersen in 1988 noted that developing awareness, knowledge, and skills of different cultures are important to work in a multicultural environment. That being said, leaders must form an understanding of different cultural backgrounds to communicate effectively and build a respectful atmosphere, whether it be in the organization or in any group that contains multiple cultures in one setting. Moving on to David Hoops. In 1979, he presented the intercultural learning process model. This learning process model explains how we learn to communicate with others and understand from and understand people from different cultures. The first stage in this process is ethno ethnotren- ethnocentrism. This is a human survival response that tells us our own culture is best. Individuals at this stage may exhibit intolerance and outright hostility or aggression towards other cultures. Individuals who do not move beyond this stage tend to feel their culture is superior and impose it onto others. This mindset could contribute to racism and sexism. The other stages of this process are transitional stages away from ethnocentrism. Those transitional stages include awareness, which is acknowledging the existence of another culture. In this stage, you recognize that there are other ways of thinking and acting. The next stage is understanding. In this stage, individuals gather knowledge about cultures. They learn about the different values and customs that culture may have. And the last stage is acceptance and respect. In this stage, people may fully accept and respect the value of other cultures. An individual will understand that each culture has their own value and are valid in their own way. Referring to this process, think about your personality in this moment in time. What stage best describes you now if you were to be introduced to a new culture? That's a question for the class. I can't really see who hands going up or not, so anybody could just answer. If not, or they could just tell me if nobody raised up their hand because I can't see.
Currently, no one has their hands up.
Okay, well, I'm gonna just move on. The riddle scale. This riddle scale shows attitudes towards differences. An individual can react to a different react negatively towards a difference or positively. Focusing on the negative levels of attitude, a person can react with, they can be repulsed. In this aspect, people can view something to be strange or crazy because it is not what they consider to be normal. In the aspect of someone reacting in pity. This, for example, you can look at another person's way of living and consider it to be lesser than yours or poor. So you could try to influence the person to live the way you are living because of the way you view their way of living. For tolerance, tolerance is you're tolerating the way a person acts in this moment of time because you're considering it to be a phase that they will grow out of. And for acceptance, this can be kind of confusing, but in this aspect, is basically implying that a person needs to change the way they are because of the other person's differences. Meaning, I would act a certain way towards you compared to other people because the way I view you to be different from other people. As for the positive levels of attitude, the first one is support. This this means standing up for someone who you consider to be different, even if that makes you feel uncomfortable. When you're supporting someone, you recognize that the society we live in is unfair and you want to protect them. For for admiration, this this topic is about respecting the strength it takes for people in the society be different. It involves looking at your own biasness and being willing to improve yourself. Appreciation. This involves genuinely valuing diversity and being willing to challenge hurtful or insecure, insensitive attitude towards others. Nurturance. This means understanding that differences are important for society. It's about genuinely showing that you care for diversity and actively supporting and advocating for those differences. Cultural influences on leadership behavior. Being aware of diversity aspects such as sex, race, ethnicity, age, sexual identity, religion, ability, and socioeconomic status all play significant roles in shaping how we behave and interact with others. No one is the same, even within the same category. We all differ in personality, values, attitudes, beliefs. As leaders, recognizing that this diversity within our group allows us to appreciate the rich perspectives that each individual brings. This helps us navigate differences more effectively rather than assuming uniformity in behavior. Unlike other participative leaders that may value empowerment of followers, relational leadership encourages collaboration and inclusivity. This approach works to challenge the culture of an organization to embrace diversity as an asset. But as Rebecca Mooney points out, appreciating diversity requires conscious effort and understanding. It is not just about checking boxes. Just to elaborate more on what she pointed out, to truly appreciate diversity means to create a space where all different voices, perspectives, and cultures are not only heard but also valued. That is, create an environment that encourages growth and collaboration in any organization or group. So, just more to support our idea, leadership processes such as communication, conflict resolution, and decision making should be considered. Moving on to one of the leadership processes, communication. Communication is more than just speaking and listening. It is about understanding and connecting across differences. Everyone has their own way of communicating. This can be influenced by their culture, experiences, and personal preferences. In any group, you may encounter a variety of ways people communicate. Some ways some people may communicate are some people can be very oh wait, can you hear me now? My internet just did.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Some people may be highly verbal, using strong oral traditions, while some might prefer written communication, offering thoughtlessness and reflection. Some people may communicate with emotions and expressiveness, while others might prioritize being more analytical or objective. Other individuals may communicate in a direct, factual manner, or some might use metaphors or symbols to convey the meaning. In some cultures, bold eye contact, as was mentioned previously, signifies confidence and respect. In others, Indirect body language is a sign of respect. In some cultures, they value promptness and timely communication, while others might adopt a more relaxed approach in the way that they communicate. That being said, before classifying these behaviors as disrespectful or incorrect, ask yourself, how does this person view communication within their cultural context, and how can I respond in a respectful way? One question for the class is, which one of your own characteristics make it hardest for you to gain an understanding? Like, for instance, in a group setting, what makes you hard to deal with? What do you think? You don't need to rush. Again, you can tell me if nobody has their hand up because I can't see.
Jan has a hand up.
Yeah, I would say one of my characteristics that would make it hard for other group members is, I wouldn't say perfectionism, but holding work to a certain standard, especially graphic work, since I am a graphic designer. There what I see isn't what others will see, and what I think is good isn't what others will think is good. So sometimes trying not to come across like I'm enforcing like a law or something, or I'm forcing someone to do something, uh, you know, maybe one of the challenges that I have.
Mm-hmm. I feel that. I feel that. Anybody else have anything else to say? No? Everybody hand down? Oh no.
Yeah, everyone's hands down. But based on what Jayan was saying, I know you would see that as an issue, but based on the presentation that you guys would have had about understanding yourself, think about it this way. If you see that as a weakness, how about you put it this way across to like your team members? Perfection isn't always bad. That way you can gain the most out of the plans that you had, make sure that it is at a standard that probably surpasses what was expected. So you could put it across in a way where not really trying to make it too perfect, but make it seem as though it is attainable. So think of okay, you want to go with your group to collect apples on a farm. Instead of saying, well, let's collect all the apples from all the trees, say
About
the
that.
person that would be able to collect the most apples from each of the trees. That way you would delve it out to individual persons and make sure that they get the most capacity of the goal that you're trying to put out without making it seem as though you have to do this in a certain amount of time or else it's failure. You understand?
Yes, I totally understand.
I could understand where she's coming from with the like perfectionism part because I am also a graphic student, and sometimes it's not intentional, but I think when you get so into like the work and the assignments and all of that, um like being an artist, I know for me I do art a lot, so just like for me one minor mistake I would just want to completely discard the entire thing. So I know that detail part about being a perfectionist, and it is overwhelming at times. Also, I think I saw somebody else hand up.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember who it was exactly.
I don't want to pronounce the person name wrong. Niclon, I believe it is. I don't know how to.
Oh, Nicolette.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, characteristic of mine is that I'm scatterbrained at times, so that I could be doing one thing and be like, ooh, another activity, time to jump to this one time, and this would often lead to me having like a bunch of unfinished tasks and eventually overwhelming with work.
But the thing is, within a group setting, that could be used as a strength as well. So putting that over to your leader in the group, they could have you do small tasks that would contribute to the bigger picture, actually, which would actually help motivate you where you have different things and you won't be bored of completing one full task and you are able to greatly contribute to the full team towards their goal. So you won't feel as though it's one set thing and your attention span needs to stay on that one set thing and you get distracted and have incomplete tasks making you seem as though you're not contributing to the overall group. So I would say promote yourself as somebody that is valuable, which you are, and the leader would understand that this is your strength and you can contribute to the group. Understood?
Yes.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Okay, I think that's it. We can move on.
Okay, moving on. Moving on to speech communities. What is a speech community? A speech community exists when people share norms about how to use talk and what purpose it serves. For example, within a workplace or gamers, they may often use unique languages or codes that members understand but others outside may not. This includes acronyms or even inside jokes. And I can relate to this because I used to be playing Free Fire. I feel like everybody had that phase. And the group who I used to rank up with, we would just have the most random codes and jokes, and no one would know what we're speaking about. So if someone new came in, they have no idea what we're talking about. But moving on. Speech communities help us communicate with diverse cultures by allowing us to understand how language is shaped by the group we belong to. Communication isn't, that being said, just remember that communication isn't only about words. It also includes nonverbal cues like facial expressions, gestures, personal space, and even eye contact. They all carry cultural meaning. Just a quote that everybody should remember: different is just different. Different is not wrong. Okay, on to the next topic: conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is the process of addressing disagreements and finding solutions that allow people to work together harmoniously, whether they agree or not. Some types of conflict behaviors include confrontational, subtle. So, in a confrontational conflict behavior, some individuals might be upfront and direct in addressing the issue, but in a subtle conflict behavior, others might not even address the issue, but if they do, they will do it in a more passive manner. For blame and accountability. Some people might shift responsibility and blame others, whereas some might take accountability and try to fix the situation. Harmony and peace saving. Some people value keeping the peace in every situation, whereas some people just want to protect their self image. A closed versus an open to options. For someone that is closed minded, they believe that their way is the only right way, while others who are open to options are open to exploring different solutions. Some people react to authority differently. Some people defer to authority, whereas some people challenge authority. Conflict resolution is not about winning or losing. It is about understanding, collaborating, and maintaining relationships in pursuit of common goals. Lastly, I'll be presenting decision making. Decision making is a fundamental part of how a group functions. In some groups, decisions are driven by majority rule and voting, while others prioritize inclusion. Just touching about, because Sir discussed this with us previously in one of his lectures about voting being the majority route. Touched on, while it might be a quick and effective way to make a decision, it would leave some voices unheard. But if we focus on inclusion, the minority options and aims that were included, wait, what am I trying to say? If we focus on everybody's opinion, it might take a longer process, but everyone would feel supported and it would create a more positive environment that everyone is working in. So good. In fact, effective relational leadership values diverse perspectives, ensuring all voices are heard in the decision making process. By embracing relational leadership and prioritizing understanding over persuasion, we can foster a decision making process that is inclusive, thoughtful, and ultimately more successful. Passing this on to Ginny Williams, where she will be discussing benefits of understanding others.
Okay, great. So as we move along, the benefits of understanding others. So on the screen, we have 9 major points in understanding others. So firstly, it improves communication. By understanding others, it would help avoid misunderstandings and create clearer communication. When we recognize that there are many different perspectives that would be able to shape a conversation, we'd be able to tailor our approach to meet the needs of others, forming a sort of inclusivity where would be able to contribute their ideas and feel good. 2, it enhances empathy. Understanding others promotes empathy, which would help build stronger relationships within the workplace or outside of the workplace. And by putting ourselves in others' shoes, we'd be able to relate to their emotions and experiences, which would help create a more effective team. 3, it reduces conflict. When we understand the perspective of others, we're less likely to cause harm or offense. Misunderstandings and conflicts can't be avoided, but by being more mindful of how we communicate and how others might interpret our words and actions, it would help reduce the amount of conflict that happens. So, for instance, for me personally, as I mentioned during the first presentation, not too sure if you guys could have heard me, but I said that one of my strengths is being direct. And in order to reduce conflict in any situation, being from a customer-based environment, I would have learned to understand that other person's perception of what I intend to say may differ from mine. And I would have learned how to provide empathy and soften the way that I would state my communication idea or perspective. It also would foster collaboration and cooperation. Understanding differences allows individuals to work together more effectively, and it encourages an inclusive environment where persons would feel valued with their diverse opinions. Those would also be respected. And 5, it would promote inclusion. So when we have a deeper understanding of other persons' like cultures, beliefs, experiences, we'll be able to promote inclusivity and reduce social barriers that may occur in a workplace where there's discrimination, racism, any gender, any gender barriers. We'll be able to break those down with a better understanding of others. 6, it strengthens conflict resolution skills. So, with that being said, when we understand the dynamics of conflict, we'll be able to better navigate and resolve disputes quicker. It would help making thoughtful decisions and finding common grounds during disagreement that would benefit either both or most parties. 7, with personal growth and awareness coming out from the benefit of understanding others, it will help to make sure that we are accepting of different values, behaviors, and it would also help us build tolerance in diverse environments, such as like workplace, social groups, stuff like that. As well as 8, it improves leadership and decision making. Leaders who understand their team members are better able to guide, motivate, and make informed decisions that will be able to not only include everyone and make sure they feel valued, but make an overall decision that would be beneficial towards everyone or the actual goal that they're trying to push. As well as with understanding diverse viewpoints, leaders are able to be more thoughtful, as well as with that effective decision making. Those goals that they have set, everyone would be more encouraged to work towards getting that goal and achieving it to the best of their ability. Lastly, it increases tolerance and acceptance. It is a bit of a reiteration, but it actually does. In the sense where when we accept differences, values, or behaviors coming from persons from diverse backgrounds, these diverse environments become a place of comfort where persons are able to speak up willingly or freely and not feel ashamed, misunderstood, or not seen at all. So those are some of the benefits of understanding others. Next slide. Leadership and communication. Effective leadership is grounded in strong communication skills where leaders must be able to not only convey their thoughts, because some persons in leadership roles, I'm not too sure if any of you experience this, where they're trying to push across a goal of the company, but all they're saying is what they want, what they believe should be done, and you feel excluded. And like your point or perspective doesn't matter, even though you know, as someone working on the other end of it, what you have in mind could potentially help the company rather than what they're pushing that you think harms it being on the back end. So has anyone worked in an environment where they have a leader that is so headstrong and only has their thoughts and perspective on any situation or issue that the company is having? Anyone at all? Don't need to raise your hand, you could just go ahead and speak.
No.
Okay, right? Well, if not, hopefully you don't experience it in the future. But moving on, leaders that are able to practice active listening, especially in diverse settings, would be able to build empathy and understanding within their teams. Next slide. So the verbal process, this was what would be able to help leaders either actively listen, to help break down any barriers in communication, misunderstandings, or any sort of conflict that may arise from those misunderstandings. So here are some examples of what the verbal process would look like coming from an effective leader that does active listening, provide empathy, where persons would be able to be heard. What I meant to say, what I actually said, what you heard me say, what you think I mean, what you mean to say, what you actually say, what I hear you say, and what I think you mean. So these are some examples of what you can use in the verbal process that could help with clear communication. Next slide. Assertive communication. In conflict situations, people react in different ways. Some may be confrontational, while others may be subtle. As stated in the previous slides, different forms of communication that persons choose. So with assertive communication, this would be where you're able to express your thoughts and feelings confidently while respecting others' rights and balancing assertiveness and empathy. So a leader who is able to assertively communicate would be able to solve conflicts and foster productive, inclusive environments. Relational leadership teaches us that conflict is not about winning or losing, but about finding solutions that are both ethical and inclusive. Next slide. Okay. So here's an example of a situation where assertive communication can be used, as well as some other forms of communication that may not be the best if you want to be an effective leader. So the question is, could you substitute for me at the event tonight? I've had something come up and cannot go after all. An unassertive response would look like, okay, sure, I guess I can. An assertive response, no, I have other plans and cannot do it. An aggressive response, how dare you ask me to do this? You always slack off on your responsibilities and I won't stand for it. So in each of those responses, the assertive response is not only respectful of the other person's concerns towards not being able to be there at night, but it also pushes your personal perspective where you're telling them you're not able to come out to substitute for them, but in a manner that doesn't seem standoffish, rude, insulting, or disregarding their genuine personal issue that they may not feel comfortable about bringing up. It is direct to the point as well as respectful, regardless of the other person. One moment, a bit of background noise. Regardless of the other person, having this personal issue, you're still able to effectively communicate what you stand for. And with the aggressive response, it is rude, standoffish, and it doesn't keep open communication where you are coming from an understanding perspective. It just outright puts you out of the situation and disregards the other person's genuine personal issue. Next slide.
Let's see. Last one. I think you have to go back to the video.
Okay. Relational empathy. In order for teams to work together effectively, there's a deeper level of understanding needed. This is what we call relational empathy. Relational empathy is about creating shared understanding in communication beyond simply recognizing differences. It involves acknowledging others' perspectives and collaborating to build a common context that benefits group dynamics. And in these environments, trust and collaboration thrive. So being in an environment where relational empathy is the core value that the leader holds, they'll be able to not only recognize differences, but allow persons to feel comfortable. That's the most part that I want you guys to take away. The best part of this presentation that I want you guys to take away being that creating comfort where other persons feel understood, seen, heard, valued within your team is the most important thing, because in that way you are an effective leader alongside the relational empathy, because understanding and acknowledging other person's perspective would be able to build a team so strong that even when conflict arises, you'll be able to work through it, being that you understand each person's perspective and differences and what they bring to the overall group. So you can go back to the video. Oh, yeah. Okay, so before you play it, right. So as we close off now, I want you to look at the video, and based on the topics that we would have covered, the benefits of understanding others, as well as what communication should look like, the different barriers that would happen that would prevent understanding others, or what it should look like if you understand those barriers. Feel free to, after the video, point out what you would have seen from the short clip that relates to the material that we would have discussed today. Go ahead.
And I'm super late! I think.
Hey, sweetie.
Hey, Cupcake.
Hey, Cupcake. Hey, kid.
Hey!
What?
Your head is massive! Good job, guys. That's pretty good.
Hey, you know what? No! I'm in a serious hurry, but someone needs to take a stand here. So in the name of all your victims...
I have no idea what that means, but it looks extremely insulting.
Is it the Vulcan gang sign?
I don't know what it means either, but that'll teach you for making fun of my head.
What?
But we meant it as a compliment. A big head means a big brain. You must be very intelligent.
Well, when you shout weird stuff from a tiny head...
Between huge arms.
It scares people.
So what should we do to make people feel good?
Try a softer approach. And keep your compliments simple. You're not doing too well with specifics.
Okay. How about...
Nice.
That just went from uncomfortable to unacceptable. Maybe just stick to a friendly gesture.
Oh, I got it. Hey.
Stop. Maybe just a simple smile. You guys really need to get out more.
You're right. We need to hang out with some other people, but where?
Okay, great. So that would have been the video that we played at the starting before we would have discussed what understanding others look like. So based on the clip being played again and the topics that we would have discussed, what are some key takeaways from the video with Gumball being the leader, and think of the construction workers as persons within your team? What do you think would have been some of the topics that you saw come out? Feel free to answer. Go ahead.
People are good, honest, and trustworthy. Because the
Good.
guy really was trying to give compliments, and they just had the wrong way about going about it.
Perfect, and that would have been one of the things I would have been discussing later as the key takeaway. Good job. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna conclude. So with the one moment. With the benefits of understanding others, based on the short scene that we saw, some of the key concepts that came out would have been decision making and empathy and communication, conflict resolution, listening and feedback, as well as finding common ground. So within the video, by understanding others, you'd avoid the risk of causing offense, embarrassment, or misunderstanding. And in this case, the workers were trying to compliment people, but their lack of awareness led to uncomfortable situations. So with the workers' good intentions, like you mentioned, they just probably went about it wrong, and it would have misfired, and they didn't understand the difference in the context being like gender and the cultural expectation of being polite. So I'm not sure if you guys noticed this. It was very subtle, but still outright. Where the older lady, which was the cupcake, she would have stormed off angrily, feeling offended by what was said. As well as with the decision making and empathy and communication, the construction workers would have changed their approach after Gumball, as the leader in that situation, gave them advice to be more empathetic and consider how others might have interpreted their words. Instead of saying, hey, cupcake, and shouting at people, he would have advised them to have like a softer approach. That would have been him as a leader making the decision to give the team members, in this case, the construction workers, feedback on how to go about things differently, with understanding how persons would have misinterpreted what they would have said, to overall develop better as a person and understand others around you, and what you say and do, how it can harm or disrespect someone. The conflict resolution. So misunderstandings like this would be a cause for conflict, as the woman in that scenario thought they were being catcalled and like the cupcake, she walked away angrily. And Gumball, he didn't stand for that role. He took the leadership role where he stood up for himself, and when the conflict arose, it was where he made a comment, and yes, he threw it up with hand signs. That would have been in that case, along with blowing a raspberry, which is the thing that he did while he put up the hand signs. It was a playful way of handling it, yes, but it also made them realize that people's reaction can be based on their personal experience and societal norms. So in that instance, they didn't understand what he was doing, and they still took offense to it, being that he was responding to what they said. So with him taking up the leadership role, he was able to, yes, playfully resolve the conflict in a way where he showed up with signs that they didn't understand, which is basically the perspective of the persons receiving the compliments in their case, quote unquote. And he was able to turn it around where he gave them feedback on how to deal with it differently to achieve what they wanted to. And the listening and feedback. So he would have been able to tell them what they were going about doing wrong, understanding that their goal that they had in mind was to give out compliments. He would have explained the intimidation factor of them being at their size, and it would have been important for them to also understand the phrases that they were using to be able to adjust their actions, and based on the feedback they were given, it would have reflected the value of them listening openly and being able to put forward that feedback in other situations with persons around them. And lastly, finding common ground. So understanding others is about adapting to different cultures, social norms, and sensitivities to those around us. So remember how I said the most important takeaway would be making others around you feel comfortable based on you understanding them on a deeper level just than what's on the surface. When you're talking to friends, strangers, colleagues, understanding the context of what you say to people and how you say it is the key to building effective relationships. The workers, in that case, after Gumball's advice, learned that their compliments need to be a bit more simpler and sincere to prevent any misunderstandings. And the feedback shows that Gumball would have put out empathy as the person in the leadership role and understanding to help them avoid the pitfalls of miscommunication that causes social barriers, miscommunication, and breakdown towards the actual team, in this case, as an example. So, as I close off, understanding others goes beyond the surface, and it takes key factors where you learn to understand person's experiences, values, belief, make sure, even though you can't come to the level of acceptance, at least tolerate it in an environment where you don't make them feel uncomfortable, unseen, unheard, and not valued within your team. So that is it. Any questions as we finally close off? Anyone? Okay. Well, that's it. Next slide as we end off. Thanks so much, everyone. And I hope that you would have enjoyed the presentation. Feel free to go through it. Any follow-up questions, reach out and we'll be happy to answer. Take care and have a great night.